and welcome back to another episode of the Stripped Whole podcast, where we challenge our faith and our perspectives, and we find hope and encouragement in whatever season we find ourselves in. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Let's jump right in. Welcome back, episode 8, Simcha here, and I cannot believe we're nearly done with season 1. It's episode 8, guys. Where's the time gone? I cannot believe it. Welcome back to all our YouTubers and to everyone following along on Apple and podcast platforms. Thanks for popping back. It's great to be with you, and I am loving this podcasting thing. And here's the question for today. What from your Corona life are you going to take with you into the post-Corona life? In our family, we talk about pre and post-Corona, and definitely for me, there were some very different things that I wanted to make sure continued in my life after Corona. And one of them was I have really started carving out time every day to do 2 things. The first is Bible, having a much longer time on my balcony with God in the morning. More coffee is being drunk. I will definitely admit to that, because they seem to go together. The longer the quiet time, the more coffee that's required. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but you know, my brother runs a coffee company, so I'm any excuse to have the good stuff. I do encourage you, if you're in the UK especially, do go check them out. They've got an amazing online store. New Ground Coffee, shout out to New Ground Coffee. Best coffee there is out there, boutique, high-end coffee. They also work with the prison services and provide opportunities for prisoners who are coming out of the system to get reintegrated and re-established with a job and some training so that they don't reoffend. So it's an amazing, amazing company. Anyway, I have plenty of New Ground coffee to drink every morning with my quiet time, and that's one of my new things that I want to make sure stays there, even though life is getting crazy again. Well, hopefully not too crazy, but you never know. And the second thing that I want to really make sure stays is exercise. I am so bad with exercise over the years. I've talked about this before in an episode. I have quite an addictive personality. I can get really into something and then I have to just keep doing it. And I'm very aware of that. So I try not to let things get to that point. And I've definitely been in that place before, lots of times with exercise, where I just overindulge and get really into it, too much so, and it becomes basically an idol. But I feel like I've just found a really good rhythm of just not expecting too much, but doing enough. And my sweet spot is 2 runs a week and 2 Pilates a week. And I'm really enjoying it. And I'm hoping that will come with me as I move out of Corona zone. Today's topic is all based on a very simple question. And here it is. Are you ready? Drum roll. Are you settling? It's a question that I ask myself quite a lot, because I think I do settle quite often for something that's less than what God has for me as a potential. I try to challenge myself regularly, because I want to be somebody who lives life to the full, not the fullness of what the world has to offer me, but the fullness of what God has for me. And one of the things that I get so brokenhearted about and so sad to see is the number of people I see walking around who are happily content with so much less than what He has available for us. There's always more that we could have from God. There's always more we could be learning from God. There's always more gifts, more blessing, more ground to take, more expansion of our lives in His kingdom. There's always more, and I think people get very happy with their little corner and just not really growing or going anywhere, and just kind of staying. And that makes me so sad, because I just feel like it's settling, and it can become very disillusioned very quickly, because we are not designed to not grow. We're designed to grow. We're designed to develop. We're designed to expand. You know, there's so many verses in the Bible about expand your territory, stretch out your tent pegs. That was the word that God gave me for 2020 before Corona happened. And he said to me, you know, stretch out your tent pegs, enlarge your vision, like take new ground. And I was like, and I felt like I had 3 areas that I was going to do that in. The first was the podcast. The second was the next book. The second was the next book. And the third thing was opening retreats. Now, Corona happened, and, you know, let's see if the retreats are possible. But also now the coaching has arrived, and that's another expansion, massive expansion for me that I did not see coming. I love that God has this concept of expansion and going bigger and getting more and taking new ground. And it's talked about so much in the Old Testament with the story of the Israelites. They're always taking new ground and defeating enemies and expanding the kingdom. And I love that, because I think it represents what God wants us to do in spiritual terms. He doesn't want us to just hold on to this tiny little portion, this little corner, you know, and just to stay there and to be content with that, because there's expanse, there's masses more that we can do and more that we can take and greater things that he wants to do. But when I see people that are content with little, in a bad way, because we should be content with little in other ways that are good, but when I see people who are content with little, in that they're not growing, they're not moving forward, they're not taking new ground, it really breaks my heart, because it's like an unfulfilled life. It's an unfulfilled creation, because we're supposed to evolve, we're supposed to grow, we're supposed to develop. And what I see it as, it's like a self-made life, not an abundant life. And it does say in the Bible many times over that he has come to give us abundance. One of the things I've come to understand through mentoring people and coaching people is that once we start digging into life, these people that are very content with not moving forward and not growing, and they're just walking around very happily content with less than what he has to offer. One of the things I've seen repeatedly become a symptom of this kind of life is regret. Regret is a really interesting thing, because it can be good and it can be bad. A good kind of regret is where you do something, you instantly regret it, you learn from it, you move on, and you're no longer in regret. It's finished, you've moved on. The regret brought you to a place of repentance, of learning, of growing, and you move on. But what I've seen is that there is a difference between regretting an action, learning and moving on, and living in regret. When a person lives in regret, so many things happen. The first is that they limit their lives, and the regret that they carry becomes their identity, and it forges who they are, and they wear that as part of who they've become. The second thing is that they don't realize that there's more beyond that. So they've adapted their identity and they've limited their view of what's possible, because they're living in this place of regret. They're punishing themselves. They're living under this weight. And what I've come to understand is that when a person lives in regret like that, what's happening is they are denying the sovereignty of God. Not intentionally. I don't think people do that intentionally, but when you give power to regret like that, and you allow it to forge who you are, and you allow it to dictate the possibilities of the future, you're removing the sovereignty from God and you're putting it on the regret. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be, because it is coming into an agreement with a lie. When we deny the sovereignty of God over something in our lives, it removes the invitation to him to be part of that part of our life. And he's always looking to be a part of our life. every part, every detail, every thread of the tapestry that is our lives. He wants to be a part of. He wants to colour it. He wants to weave it. He wants to direct the thread. He wants to be in everything. And when there is a thread of regret in our lives, first of all, that thread of regret can spread to other threads, and it can really start to make things become very toxic. But not only that, when regret is present in there and we don't think God was sovereign over that thread, we actually have made an idol of that regret, because we're attributing more power to it than it should ever get. And I love the realization that people have when they understand that it's very simple to fix this, because all you have to do is invite God into that thread, invite God into that regret, and actually put it down, move on, and grow from it. And that's a moment of complete freedom for people. It's a place where we can step out of this restricted and limited life and step into abundance. I think everybody carries an element of regret from things they've walked through in life, things they wish they'd done differently, things that they look back on and wonder, why did I do that? We all have those moments. And, you know, I was talking in the last episode about the power of story and the power of how our story is there to give him glory. And I love that God can redeem regrets. He can. I have so many things in my life that I can look back on and be like, why did I do that? What an idiotic thing to do or say. And the difference between living in regret and learning from regret is that living in regret would say, well, if since I did that thing, I must be this and I must be that. And so I therefore deserve this and I deserve that. And it's limiting and restricting and it's punishing. Whereas learning from regret would have you say, you know what? I now know never to do that again. I now know I need to be more careful about this, or I now know this, that, and the other. And God has helped me grow and helped my character develop and helped me understand more of who I am and how I function and how I need to invite him into that. But I'm not going to dwell on all the things I did wrong. I'm forgiven, I'm restored, so I'm going to move on and grow from this. So really, the topic that I'm presenting to you today is this question of, am I settling? And often when the answer is yes to that, it's because somewhere along the line, we've settled in regret. We've decided, I'm not worthy, I'm not able, I'm not capable, I'll just do it wrong again, I don't deserve it. And I'm not saying I do deserve it and I am worthy, because I really don't believe that I am. It's purely because of grace that we ever get anything good out of life, because actually we deserve death, as the Bible says. You know, the wages of sin are death, and thank God he figured a way around it. But what I'm saying is, if once we start punishing and we live in that place of, like, it's like eternal purgatory, we just punish ourselves over and over again, that is not a place of abundance and fullness of life. That's a place of punishment and limiting and restriction, and that becomes the world that we live in, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But when you couple that with being a believer, you end up in this place where the enemy tricks you into believing that you're fulfilled when you're not. He tricks you into believing you're living in the fullness of life when you're not. And I've met people, I've mentored women who have no idea how incredible they are and how incredible their gifts are and how impacting for the kingdom they could be if they just let it go, if they just stepped out of that place of woe is me and I'm not worthy and I'm just terrible and I did this thing once and I'm just awful, and they've become content with this lesser version of their identity than God ever intended for them to have. And when we do that, we give ground to the enemy and we limit the sovereignty of God in our lives. And it's so easy to do. It's such a crafty little trick that the enemy plays on us when it comes to this area of settling The other way that we end up settling is by putting the world's filter on our circumstances. We look at money, we look at achievement, we look at promotion, we look at these things, and they become the aim in life. Now, there's nothing wrong with a promotion. There's nothing wrong with a house. There's nothing wrong with wanting a new car. There's nothing wrong with these things. I want a car. I love cars. I'm big into cars. When I was growing up, I used to joke that the only way I could hang out with my dad and my brother was if I watched Top Gear. So I would spend every Sunday night, I think it was on, watching Top Gear with my dad and my brother. So as a result, I learned a lot about cars. I love cars. But don't get me wrong, my aim in life is not a certain car. I do have a target car that I'd like to have, but it's not my aim in life. And I think a lot of people find themselves in a position where all of their aspirations, all of their targets, all of their aims in life are material. And I would say, even if you get all of those things, even if you get every single one on your list, it is not the fullness of life. It's not. You're kidding yourself if you think that's the fullness of life. I've got nothing against a nice big house or a nice big car or a nice bank account full of cash. I've got nothing against that, but that is not the definition of a fullness of life. And that is what I mean when I say people walking around with so much less than what they could have because they've settled for some different narration of what fullness of life is. It's something that I'm so passionate about, because God has treasures in heaven that he is wanting to pour out. But because we've either slapped a worldly lens onto our world, or we've decided to live under regret, we don't ever taste these treasures. We don't ever discover these treasures. They're just like gifts falling from heaven around us that we never even look at or stop to pick up. And this is something that I'm really, really passionate about seeing people understand and adjusting their view on things. You might be going through the worst, driest desert, but if you know that in the desert there are treasures, that changes your perspective on the desert. There is always a treasure. There's always treasure that we can have. Always, in any season, whatever it is you're going through, God is trying to give you treasure from heaven. He's trying to work a work in you that is eternal. He's trying to partner with you. He's always extending a hand out to you. But we have kidded ourselves into believing that life through this lens or under this rock of regret or whatever it is enough, and it's full, and we've settled for it. So my challenge to you today is really this: are you settling? Are there regrets that you need to just put down now? Is there a weight that you're carrying around that has restricted your version or your definition of abundance? Another thing that I've come across is these believers, these Christians that love to be a martyr, the ones that would believe that anybody having money is just evil and wrong. I don't believe in that either. I think money is a very difficult issue, and I just really don't buy that it's a signal of abundance. It can be an abundance, financial abundance, but it's not the signal or the symptom of an abundant life. Abundant life is an eternal thing. It's a heavenly thing. It's a gift from God that you might be in prison and have an abundance of life. You might be living in Africa in a starving nation and have an abundance of life. It is not to do with material needs. It is not to do with money, and it is not to do with your situation in life. So take this challenge today and ask yourself the question: am I settling? Am I walking around happily content with less than what he has available to me? Because I don't know about you, but I want to be living in the fullness of what he has available to me. I want to be walking around never satisfied with what I have in him, because there's always more. I'm going to be like Jacob for the rest of my life. I'm going to wrestle and wrestle and wrestle for more and more and more until the day I die, and that'll be the day when I get it all. Right? Who's with me? Can I hear an amen? Come on, someone out there. I'm so passionate about this. And if this is something that you want to talk about more, and if this is something that you really want to dig into, I would love for you to get in touch, because this is something that I do coaching about, character and gift development. This is one of the keys that we talk about. Am I settling? Am I too happy with too little? Don't take my words out of context here. I'm talking about living in the fullness of what God has for us. I'm talking about walking in the abundance of the gifts of heaven, the abundance of the spiritual fruit of heaven, the abundance of God pouring out his blessings over your life, and that may not have anything to do with a house or a car or a paycheck. I've met people who have nothing. They don't have a permanent address. They don't know where they're going. They follow the cloud. They are the richest, living in the most abundance, the most impacting, inspiring, just incredible people. I can't even begin to tell you. I've got one person in particular I'm thinking about here whose story is insane. She does not have a house. She does not have a car. She does not have an income. She is absolutely living in the fullness. She sees miracles, she sees provision, she sees abundance, she sees treasures all the time from heaven. She is living in the fullness. And you know what I love about her? She is so not settled. She is so not settling. She is still pursuing more. She spends hours every day pursuing God in the secret place. In fact, you can never speak to her before midday, because she is on her face every day before God, and she will not talk to anybody until she's done with him every day. And that is, I mean, I know that's an extreme and it's not feasible for all of us to do that, but I love the heart. The heart is there. Anyone can have that heart, a heart that is so pursuing and so desperate for more that they're unwilling to settle. I talk about in my books a healthy dissatisfaction, where we are pursuing and unrelenting in our pursuit of more of God. There's always more. He's always got more. So let's not give in when we're only at 1%. Let's keep going. Let's keep pushing. There is more. And that's a place where I want to live. And I think that's the most exciting place that we can live, because I think that's where God shows up. He shows up in our pursuit. He shows up in our desperation and our unrelenting pursuit for more of him. And you know, Jacob, when he wrestled with God, he didn't give up. And you know, God marked him, so he was never the same again. He had a physical mark that he was never the same again. And I actually have found myself to ask God for that. Like, I've been finding myself asking him, you know, would you mark me so that I'm never the same again? I want to be marked. I want my wrestling with you to mark me and change me so I'm never the same again. Because actually it's the engaging in that process, engaging in that wrestle, coming face to face with God and not letting go, and that tenacity to come before him and do it, that changes you. And it marks you. People will see that it shows up in your walk. You know, I love that God decided to affect Jacob's walk as a result of his wrestling, because it just shows that his walk was affected. I know it was his physical walk, but I think that's an amazing picture. Our walk is affected when we wrestle with God, and we look different, we walk different, we have a different posture as we move forward. So don't settle.
That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me on this Stripped Whole podcast. If you've liked what you've heard today, please leave a rating and a comment down below so that we can hear your feedback and do better next time. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode.